and it's like a soap opera. So it's basically like any comic, like it's romance, it's drama, it's it's like the height of people's emotions, and all punctuated by physical fake violence, which is crazy if you think about it.
Welcome back to Inspired Inc., the CWS podcast, a show where we promote indie comic creators and become inspired by what they create and their journey of creating it. I'm your host, Brandon Bloxdorf, and today on the show, we have creator Tanya Dorph-Mankey joining us, and we talk about what a day job means as a creative, managing expectations as you pursue a creative degree in school, and how finding a community can give you confidence in your work. All this and so much more on today's Inspired Inc. But, doing your barista work, where does your artwork fit in with everything in your life? Like, how did that come into like play, and how did you making zines and going into the direction of like wanting to make comics enter your life?
Well, I mean, I've always made art, so that comes first. The doing like having a day job is, that's so I have money to live, and then I can do art. But and also has the flexibility and like, you don't take your work home with you, that sort of thing. It also allows me to be able to go to conventions, be like, I need to take 4 days off this weekend. And then a normal job, they'd be like, actually, we can't let you do that. But this one, I'm like, yeah, Yeah. But I mean, doing, comics and stuff, that just came kind of, I've always loved telling stories. I've always wanted to do like visual, I called it visual narrative for a while. I didn't know if I wanted to do, prose with illustration, things like that. I just kind of always kind of in my head wanted to do indie comics. And then it kind of took COVID, honestly, to be able to give me time to do it. You're stuck at home. I wasn't, working I wasn't working as a barista at the time because everything was shut. It just kind of those 2 years gave me the time and space I needed to, really buckle down, make a ton of work. So.
Oh yeah, there's so much to pull from right there too. Like, especially what you said, like you don't take your work home with you. Mm-hmm. And I think that is something that when creatives are looking for a way to, make ends meet and pay rent and get groceries and just survive and get their supplies, like finding a job that's not overbearing on you, because I feel like a lot of us do chase a career that we want to be fulfilling. And being a creative, it's hard to be fulfilled and be fulfilled financially as well. But like sometimes, and I fall into this pattern too, where you start searching for jobs that'll be the full 40 hours a week. And it's a business that you're going to be devoted to completely, probably salary where you're going to work off hours. And you're like, man, this is going to save me. I could pay rent. I could pay groceries. I could do this. I could do that. I finally have money for vacation, X, Y, and Z. It can fund my tables at conventions. I could print my books easily, but like that's probably going to strip away from your ability to make art and make comics and like do those things. And there are those people who are able to balance that out and have a job where that's fulfilling and that makes it work. But, I kind of fall into the same realm where I was like, post COVID, where like, the company I was working for was doing a lot of like layoffs, and I was part of it. And I was like realizing like, my next job, I got to find something that I can work with, something that makes me breathe and something that helps me like actually make my dreams come true. And I can do that instead of me depending on them to like fund my dreams. And then I just never do my work and I'm too exhausted and I hate everything and I don't have time and I can't get anywhere with it. Do you think that's why, like, being a barista and like I work at a grocery store, it's one of those things. And it's like, do you think that's why that kind of works out with you just so well? Because, on your art sense, you finally feel more fulfilled?
Yeah. I mean, I think that it took a long time, kind of. Well, I mean, I'm still coming to terms with like the divide you kind of, or the way that you have to think about your day job as opposed to what you're, I'm still feel like I'm chasing this career, but the career is art now. It's not, a white collar job in an office. And I've had to deal with seeing people that I started at the company with, because I've been there for a long time, moving up and becoming managers, or becoming, just moving to roastery, like the roastery aspect, or, moving on to different jobs in general, totally leaving the company and like moving up in those sectors, and to be kind of in the same place. And realizing that, if my goal in life was to be a manager, or was to be a regional manager, or to move up within this company, then maybe I wouldn't be in a good, I would want to reconsider my, the way that I'm going about, my life and what I'm doing, and moving ahead. But I realized that, I am getting a lot of what I want right now out of my art. I can go to, I can table, I can meet people. I'm in a gallery show. I'm publishing my own books. I'm working on my original graphic novel. So that's the thing, is if I was working, a 40-hour job, I have a lot of interest. I'm sure I could find a job that I would love that's could lead to another career in another sector. But I just, right now, this is what's working. And I feel like, especially also with younger people, millennials, even, Gen Z, it's not the same as when our parents and our grandparents were working. And, companies don't give you a pension. Usually you're not working there for 40 years, even if you love a job, either because the business goes out of business, or you just move on. Like, it's just not the same landscape as it was anymore. Yeah. So I think that the whole idea of a career that we've absorbed from previous generations just doesn't even apply to us anymore. Or it does apply in terms of like being a lawyer or being a banker, or things that I would not do.
Exactly. Definitely there too. Yeah. I'm not going to be a doctor of any sort at this point.
A doctor, yes. Yes. Or I have friends who are nurses, they work so hard to go through school. They, and even they have trouble, they travel around a lot. They have to really work for their contracts. They have to compete for their contracts. It's not the same thing as you get a job, you stay there forever, and you work and you build up this thing, and then you retire. Now you kind of have to find the thing that works for you now. Hopefully you're saving money. Hopefully you're making enough money to pay your utilities, pay your rent, have a little fun on the side. Right. And then make your art, I guess, as an artist, right? Yeah.
No, I vibe with that all too well, completely, and especially when I came back from, being in a certain position in life and having X amount of money and feeling like I was successful. I was miserable at that job. And then going into I work at a grocery store, and I was like, I'm kind of above this. Like, I feel like I should be somewhere else. Like, I have management experience. I've done X, Y, and Z. And it took me a while to come to terms with like what I was doing and where I was in life. And I realized like, hey, you know what? Like, this does, provide for me. This does, like, I am happy here. Like, I could come in here and I don't hate my job. I don't hate the people I work with. It's a great environment. Like, it is a bit tiring because it's a job. You know what I mean? We'd all be rather doing other stuff because it's a job. Yeah, you're on your feet, you're running around. Yeah. And it's like, but like, out of everything else, like, as tired as I am at this place, and I don't really see myself moving up and wanting to be part of like a bigger chain, and all this type of stuff. It's like, you know what? I've done more artistically in the last like year and a half of my life working here than I did, the 20, 30 other, years I was working and doing other jobs. And I think that's a great thing to come to terms with, is like, what's working with you now? Like, what's going to help you really, realize that what you do outside of your day job is probably more important than your day job. And your day job shouldn't define you. Like, you choose how you define yourself. And we choose to define it with our art and our stories and, doing this type of podcasts and interviews. Like, I do these on my days off, and sometimes the same days I work, but like I get off of work or I enter my day off being like, well, I got 3 interviews lined up. I'm going to talk to some cool people. I could be resting, but this is like one of those things you want to like pour yourself into. And that's where the passion comes from. And you're right. It's totally different from how our previous generations encountered work. And I think that's why so many people in those generations struggle finding jobs and work now, because everything's just shifted and jobs aren't the same anymore.
Yeah.
Like, overall, like the positions you apply for, I don't even know how to get hired at half the places, at this point. It's like a mystery to like even land a job of any sorts at this point too.
Yeah. I mean, my mom is older. She waited to have me. So she is in her 70s. And so she lives in a community for seniors right now. And there are people who are still working. You have to be over 65 to live there, and they're working, and they are working at grocery stores. They're working as cashiers, they're working. And it's because, like, even for them, like, even if they worked at a job, like, they had my brain wants to say tenured position, but that's for teaching, like, so they worked at the same place forever. That nowadays it doesn't really mean as much as it used to. You don't build that relationship with the company that you're working with. So like, that's what I feel is I mean, like, obviously you don't want to be living paycheck to paycheck, or if you are, you don't want it to be forever, because you do want to, we don't know what's going to happen down the line. I'm very like money conscious. So I I save for retirement, like all that sort of stuff. But, you just kind of, you never know also what's going to happen down the line. So to me, I guess I try and be comfortable now. I try to make sure I'm thinking of the future, but then also I want to be happy now. And I don't want to look back and say, like, I did get a good 40-hour-a-week job where I was making a good amount of money, but I passed up on all those tabling opportunities. I didn't get to speak at those panels at the conventions. I didn't have time to make the art that then got into the gallery show, that then got me noticed by this, that, or the other, got me to meet these people, so yeah, I mean, we're also young too, so we can still do stuff,
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, that's a great point too, is that like, you don't want to wait till you're retired to start being like, I'm going to begin my art journey when I'm fulfilled and retired, because you don't know how that endpoint's going to be, because we've seen how wild life can be. Like, I think COVID showed all of us, like, things can change in a week, 2 weeks, and all of us can live different lives. And then we all got thrown into a roller coaster, and then we kind of got spat out like nothing. And now we're just like, where did those years go? Like, now,
they don't exist. They don't exist.
It's a big blur for a lot of us at this point. And, we've lived through so many wild events over the last decade. It's kind of hard to process all of that while trying to figure out our means to like make a living and figure out how to fit art into all of that too. But, COVID, like you said, it gave us that break to kind of make us rethink what we're doing and reanalyze and figure out what we do love. And you seems like you've been booming since then, since your art career has kind of been taking off and you poured yourself into it. I love what you're saying, like, the prose with narration, basically, or not narration. What was the word I'm thinking of? Was it narration? I think it might have been narration that you said. But stories, and does that mean like, putting prose with like images? Does that what like led you into like working on a zine before comics, since they're a bit more flexible in that essence?
I think that, like, so it's more so that my introduction to comics was not traditional introduction. So I was never a Marvel or DC fan. I was kind of introduced to comics when I was young. The comics I read were Garfield, Betty and Veronica, Far Side, so it was kind of that sort of thing. And then as I got older, I'd go to conventions and get just random people, random artists stuff. And it really taught me that comics can be anything. In that, I was inspired to make, I wasn't, my driving wish to make comics was not inspired by superhero comics, for example. So like very traditional, Stan Lee, Jack Kirby, style, just like, what you think of as comics if you don't read comics, right? So doing the zines, and also I was a printmaker in college. So
cool.
Zine culture, also punk music, all of that sort of do it yourself, do it for cheap so you can share it with people, make, for printmaking, making editions and then being able to sell them cheaper than having one single original piece of work was a huge aspect of making zines. So doing like short comics like that and then being able to have a little book that you hold in your hand was, and still is, a huge part of making things for me. Cause I want to be able to just like, I do a lot of pro wrestling stuff. So I just give my stuff to the professional wrestlers because I want to be able to do that. It's harder to do that if you have a $30 book. But if you have, a zine that costs you whatever, $2-3 to make, you can just be like, yeah, sure, I'll just give you anything you want. Here you go,
That totally makes, because there's times I give away my book and our anthology is like our punk anthology is like $15. And whenever I give away a copy, I'm just like, I really like you. I really like you.
Yes. Trust me, this means something. Me giving you this.
Really good quality. I hope you do look at it, please. Like, I love that. That's so awesome. I'm almost kind of jealous of like your introduction to comics because as I've grown older and I've, absorbed more comics, I'm so much more attracted to everything else that's not Marvel and DC at this point. And as you could tell, even with my background, I love my Marvel, DC, my Jack Kirby, all that type of stuff. But like everything else is what inspired me so much more than what they did. It wasn't until I discovered indie comics and it wasn't until I realized what indie comics can do and what they look like that I think that cookie cutter Jim Lee, Jason Fabok, Tony Daniel aspect that like really intimidated me as a creator. And I didn't want to draw because I knew I would never be at that level. And I thought like whatever I had would just kind of look bad in comparison, And it wasn't until I got into indie comics that I was like, oh, it doesn't matter. Like, just draw it. Just put it on the page. Have fun with it. It just whatever comes out is what comes out. Like, there is no expectation except for my own expectation. And I feel like going the route that you went down, probably a lot easier to absorb, much more inspirational, and not in the sense of not so looked down upon when it comes to artwork. It doesn't feel so snobby. It feels very open and relaxed and happy. And I feel like I look at that art and I'm inspired because I'm like, I want to go do that too. Like, I want to jump on that train. Where it was like when I was a kid and I look at comics, I'd be like, this is awesome. I love this, but this is impossible. Like, I will never get here ever. It's like trying to start a band and being like, I'm going to be Kiss right out. You know what I mean? Like, it ain't going to happen. It's totally different level, different times, all that type of stuff. But indie work is just so much more like just real and down to earth and relatable. And it makes you feel good as a person. And it makes, creators feel good as you can hand out, things like what you're handing out. And that once I started collecting indie stuff at, conventions and I'd go through them when I got home, I've never felt more fueled. And talking to creators like you, and I go back and look at your work or look at your guys' work before the show, I'm always so inspired. And now I'm working on a zine for the first time because I interviewed someone and I was like, you know what? I'm just going to go ahead and do this at this point. And that happens with comics, with mainstream, but it's not as tangible. You know what I mean? Like, we're not going to be all drawing Spider-Man on a monthly, and that's fine. And I just be happy to be putting out my own zine, my own books, my own creations, because there's just way more heart in it. I feel in a certain, way of looking at perspectives and whatnot too. And it's cool that you're getting to wrestling. I'm not personally a wrestling fan, but I remember bashing on someone that was really into wrestling and they were older, like they were like my age, like, entering their 30s and everything. And they're like, oh, so older men dressed up in outfits who are fighting each other in front of everyone, that you're not into that, Brandon. And I'm like, you know what? That does sound a lot like a comic book. I see your way of thinking here. And ever since then, I'm like, everything about it makes sense as a comic book creator. When you're looking at anatomy, and when you're looking at like physique and poses and like angles and fun stuff you can do. Is that what got you into wrestling to kind of like have that be part of your creation aspect?
So professional wrestling is, you have to think of it as, it's like performance art. So it's
Yeah.
basically like but it's so much more than that. So it's like, it's fake, but it's real.
Hmm.
It's, but they work really hard to make it look real, even though it's fake. It's people who like dedicate their lives to this performance. So it's just like any other actor or,
Hmm.
artist or at all. But then on top of that, you have incredible physical, uh, you know, acts that they're doing, the stamina that you have to be at peak physical performance to be a good pro wrestler.
Oh yeah.
And it's like a soap opera. So it's basically like a any comic, like it's romance, it's drama, it's people, it's like the height of people's emotions, and all punctuated by physical fake violence, which is crazy if you think about it.
Yes.
But it's just it's like just the peak of strange exhibition. I don't know.
Hmm.
It's so, and then there's this one company, they don't run shows anymore, but they were called Chikara, and that's a huge part of the art that I make. And a lot of the masked wrestlers that I draw were in Chikara.
Oh.
And it's pretty much just superheroes. Like there are people dressed up like ants. So yeah, and they're in full costume, mask. You don't know who's under the mask, and so they're just like superheroes, and it's made for kids. They don't curse. It's like your own little superhero story, basically. And so I feel like it's very much like comics, and superhero comics. And so I feel like translating it to art into another medium is very easy. And that's why it's so inspiring. Because you can really take anything you want from it. You can take the reality of it and really work with that, which is a lot of what I do, which is kind of talking about what it must be like to have this character that you play, but part of that character is yourself. And where's the line between the two things? Or really leaning into like the surreal aspect of like, this is real, but it's really fake. But then also you can like bring in other aspects to it, and push those kind of boundaries in either direction, or you can go totally fake and just make it into some weird thing, like with people who have actual superpowers, or the ants do live in a place called the colony. Is it underground? I don't know. Like is this one guy named Hollowicked who is a pumpkinhead? Is he actually from Sleepy Hollow? I don't know. Like, is there time traveling? Is there mind control? And so I feel like the medium of professional wrestling is so open in the same sense that fantasy, is,
Hmm.
and anything. So it just is great. It's just great,
Yeah, no, it's putting it in such a different perspective and lighting. Because for me, for years, it was just like something I grew up with and I'd watch with my dad, and it was like a pastime. And now that I'm growing older, I'm like, man, I think I'm gonna start getting back into wrestling because it's being brought up so much. And everything you just said totally makes sense.
Mhm.
And it's basically just living out another dream, another fantasy, and another fun way to look at life. And also, like, as we escape our day jobs and all of that messiness, going into something like that, why not have fun and go
Mhm.
bombastic and campy and all that type of sense? Like, it's the right amount of nonsense to have you be inspired. And that's like what you want to hit whenever you're watching something. And that's so cool. And like how, when you're first drawing and then like making this transition into everything, what really got you into like drawing yourself? Like, was there like a family presence that really motivated you? Was it something like it just that you just latched onto?
Um, well, so I come from a very artistic family.
Oh,
My
cool.
dad was a great artist and a poet, and my mom was a
Oh,
musician.
oh,
Um,
cool.
so I was very much, as soon as I showed any sort of interest in anything, my parents were very supportive. I took many classes as a child and all different sorts of things. And, I did ceramics, I did art classes, I did knitting, I did sewing, I did gymnastics, I did piano, everything. So and since my dad was an artist, he was very supportive, like from when I was like 2 years old. He had a huge board set up in the living room with a big piece of paper on it with markers and a bin next to it that I could just draw on whenever I wanted.
All right.
So it's just kind of making things available. And so I've always done art. I can't remember when I didn't do art. I always have drawn. My parents were big readers, so they really promoted me to read, and write. And I don't know. And then I went to art high school. So I basically got like basic college art education in high school. And then I went and got an art degree. And so, yeah, I just have always done it.
That's another interesting thing too, because I studied music and then I went to be a creative writing major. And do you feel like, when we're talking about degrees and careers and all that type of stuff, and and education is a big part of choosing your path as you try to enter one of these careers. What was your mindset when you were going to be and choose like art to study in college? Was it to be like an artist and for it to benefit you, or were you looking to find like a path to get like a full career in that aspect?
It's hard to say because this year is actually 10 years since I've graduated from college. But I think on it, now you don't want to get me started on me. Like, I think that 17 is too young for kids to decide what they want to do in college.
I feel you there. Yeah. No, my first year in college was I bombed, and then I took a year off, and then I was like, I'm good. I didn't continue because I didn't know what I was doing at all. Like,
So, but I did art in college because it's the only thing I wanted to do. Was it a smart decision? Should I have gone for a degree in something that I could have gotten a job for? I don't know. I went to a state school, so I did not go to a private institution like that's more well recognized, like SVA or RISD or I'm trying to think Parsons.
Yeah.
I only did the New York City ones, but I think that was a great boon for me, not going to a school that left me thousands of dollars in debt. But I just kind of got an art degree, I think, because that was what I wanted. It's the only thing in life that I ever really wanted to do that was a huge draw my whole life. But I don't know if it got me much. I think that the things that are very important is school helps you meet people, and it gives you a community and a place to work on your art. And I think that those were the greatest advantages for me for going for an art degree, because I had already had a lot of the basic instruction done in high school. And could I have gotten more instruction in college if I had gone to a private university? Maybe, but then you have to kind of decide whether the trade-off of $100,000 in debt for more instruction, because there are people who are graduating from SVA, who I see their work and it's incredible. Could I have gotten there 10 years earlier if I'd gone to one of those schools? Maybe, but this is the path I'm on. You can't regret, anything really. Right.
Yeah, no, I love that so much. I felt the same way with although I am thousands of dollars in debt, but I don't know who's more responsible, me or them giving 60 grand for me to be a poet. You know what I mean? Like, whose decision was that, guys? But it's one of those things where I basically like made a decision. I was like, I'm going to do this for myself. Like whatever I get out of it. I tried going to a local university in El Paso, and I just thought the teaching was just horrific. And I switched schools. I went to Full Sail University. They're based out of Florida. You probably see them advertised for creative stuff all the time. And I had realized like okay, I'm going to go to the school, and it's a 2-year program for a BFA, and it's for creative writing. And I was looking at what a creative writing degree can get you. And it's like, oh, you could work at, work as a TV writer. You can do this, you could do that. All these things that are like impossible to actually get into is what you can do with a creative writing degree, which is pretty much very slim pickings. You have to really move to like LA and hustle like crazy, or do X, Y, and Z and just like pour yourself out there, and your chances of success are very minimal. So when it comes to like art degrees, for me, it's like you're doing that out of passion. You're doing that for yourself, and you shouldn't be trying to like chase like the dragon of money and stuff like that. If you're going for an art degree, just know that you're going in there for growth. Like you were saying, it helped like, build a community a bit. It helped challenge me. It helped give me a workspace. And it got me to do things I would have never thought about doing. I made like a children's book. I did like a spec script for like Brooklyn Nine-Nine and all sorts of stuff, things I would have never attempted, but it helped me build as a creative. I even got to be like a showrunner for like a team project, and I was selected because they liked my script. Cool bunch of stuff to help build confidence and ideas. But like the overall aspect of like, oh, I'm going to make a living right after I graduate, from college and do this. No, no, but it's like, do I regret any of it? No. I think I got so much out of it, and it helped prep me up for things that, now I feel confident in what I do. Now I'm seeing these stories that I kind of had little ideas for in college actually come to life. This comic, Fake Your Death, I'm working on right now with China Rosemaria. That was a project that I was working on, and now it's fruition into this. So it's like, people take a lot into like college and deciding what they're going to do with their future and whatnot, but it's always coming down to like, well, what's going to make you happiest? Are you going to chase the dream, or are you just going to kind of succumb to what you just have to set? Basically, I feel like if you don't choose your art path that you really want, then you're just settling at that point. And it looks like both of us are choosing the art path that we wanted, and figuring out a way to get there, no matter what. And that's just kind of the sacrifice you have to do whenever you make those big life decisions at that point too, I feel.
Mm-hmm.
And so like going forward with you and your like art and everything, what are your overall intentions? You said you were working on an original graphic novel. Can you like expand like your thought process and work on that right now?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like this year, a lot of stuff so just suddenly like took off and it's kind of crazy, honestly. But I've had this graphic novel idea since 2022 is when I first started working on it. It's pro wrestling. It's a queer romance, but it's kind of all about community and self-acceptance and all of those themes, but through the lens of pro wrestling, which is what pro wrestling is for. What was great, actually, that I think is the most important, almost the most important takeaway of me starting to work on this project was I started going to conventions last year because I had made enough work to then feel confident selling it. I totally overprepared. You can have way less work than I do to sell at these conventions. But I started going to these conventions. I was one of the programming people, the programming director. He liked my work because he's a fan of wrestling. He put me on a panel to speak about it. The moderator of the panel was incredibly nice, and I didn't know anyone, so they let me hang out with them the whole convention weekend. I met a bunch of artists, and all of them were like, you should make this comic. Like, it doesn't matter that it's a year and a half later than when you first started working on it. This is great. Like, it was just 100% the support of peers pushing me to revisit this idea that I had abandoned. And so the most important thing, I think, is honestly finding community, and they will support you. Like, I didn't have an artist, for a very long time. I have a couple artist friends here and there, but I did not have an artist community to support me. And so anyway, that's a very important takeaway, is find your artist community to support you 100%, because I would not be where I am now 6 months later working on these things without knowing people, being nice to people, meeting people, talking to them, getting to know them. Crazy. It's true. It's all true. Connections. I mean, but it's not even connections, just being nice and meeting people and making friends. Anyway, but graphic novel. And
it's such an important aspect too. I'm glad you brought that up, because so much on the show, we have a lot of people in the lesser known comics community here, and we emphasize like crazy on like community. And I love hearing that a different part of the community that's not LKC and stuff that we kind of dabble with starting the show. Just because I know all the LKC people, I have them on the show basically. But I have like, you're a great example of like, there are multiple communities out there, and just because you're not part of this one doesn't mean you can't discover your own and find that niche and find your people within the art community, because they're out there and they exist. And you are living proof that that will happen and can happen if you go out there and put yourself out there at those conventions.
I mean, and the number one thing is just be nice. Just be nice and have an open mind, be excited to meet people. Always just be kind, and, give your work to people for free, and they will give their work to you for free, and just build up, just be open and welcoming.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, this comic that I'm working on, I'm in the writing phase right now. I totally revisited everything that I had been previously working on. I already have all the characters. They've pretty much stayed the same, but I'm redrawing. I drew like 100 pages of this comic back in 2022. Yeah. But it was too long. It was not in the right style. I wasn't putting enough information on the pages. I was still very much at the beginning of my comics journey, because 2022 was when I kind of started doing all these zines. I made a bunch in the last 2 years. And so I'm trying to take everything I've learned and implement them into this comic. Be more concise, have the whole story planned out before I start drawing it, have all the story beats, really start thinking about writing. I've been watching a lot of like writing YouTube videos on like story pacing and act structure and stuff, which has been fun, because that's not something I just usually would just write. And not really think about that sort of thing. But script writing was a huge thing that I've been reading about, because honestly, writing a script for a TV show or a movie is not that much different from writing a comic, because it's both visual. You have to do things in scenes. If you don't see it, you have to then tell about it in another scene. It's like it's pretty much the same thing, which I think is very interesting. But yeah, so it's, it's a big project. I've never done anything this big before. So I'm hoping that I can stick with it, and I will stick with it. I'm not hoping, I'm going to be positive. I'm sticking with it, and I'm going to ideally, hopefully get the first 3 chapters done by September for Small Press Expo.
Rad.
Yeah, that's my goal, is to have at least 2, hopefully 3 of the beginning of the comic available there, so I could be like, this is what I'm making, everyone. Please read it.
Oh, awesome. I should be there this year, so I'd love to swing by and grab a copy. 100%.
Yes,
that'd be
definitely.
So great. Yeah, so exciting to hear that. And it's, if you're diving into like things to help you as a better writer and as a better creator and as a better storyteller, I do but I do suggest this channel. It's called You Are a Storyteller. It's by Brian McDonald and Jesse Bryan. They're the 2 hosts, and they talk about basically the craft of writing. And that is promoting a totally different channel and people, but it's such a good resource that I think I've talked about it multiple times on this show. And I can't express how much you will go and learn. If you look on YouTube or Spotify, wherever, You Are a Storyteller, I kind of go through
it up right now, so I don't forget.
I start at the beginning, and I kind of blast my way through it right before I do any project, because it just really does like fuel you with so many great things that you overlook with storytelling, and it gives you great examples, and it's just such a good resource to enhance yourself, and to really enhance your craft overall. So definitely good resource for you. I think you'll have a blast listening to it.
Yeah.
And does it feel like intimidating going from such a scale from like something small like a zine that you could give away for free or $2 to $3 to like a full-on graphic novel at that point? Do you feel like it's like going from like, you know, a clubhouse to like a building at that point?
Nah, it's fine.
I love that.
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know. It just, I mean, I've written like a lot. I've like actual like story stuff that I've never shared. I've written during COVID, I wrote like over 200,000 words of stories, short stories, longer ones, like, so,
What
I'm
keeps you
used,
so driven to like spit out so much work and so much time? Because even in the couple years you're naming, it's a lot of work you've been doing.
yeah, I mean, honestly, I think it was, I think it's just was COVID, like, because we were all so deprived in that era. We couldn't do anything. We couldn't see anyone. We were all stuck at home. And I think a lot of it was escapism because I was working as a barista in the beginning of the pandemic. And it was horrendous.
I can imagine.
And I got like super depressed, and like full of anxiety all the time. I was very, because it was before the vaccine, just worried you're going to die,
Yeah, you walk
like,
outside, you bump into someone, you're like, what's going to happen next? Like, I will
yeah,
find out in the next 48 hours if I'm going to have symptoms or what's going to happen. Oh,
yeah,
we don't even know. We were scared to breathe, Yeah.
yes, yeah. And then having, on top of that, having to commute into work and then be at work for 8 hours where people were treating you like you were nothing. Because the people who were going to coffee shops at the beginning of the pandemic didn't think it was real.
Yep.
So
Yep.
it's like it was the worst possible situation. And so it was 100%, I think, escapism. Like I would come home and I would, I'd work 8 hours. I'd come home at whatever, 8, 9 p.m. and I'd draw until like 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock. I was just so prolific at that period. And I wrote a lot. And I mean, I like at that, in that, so I just, yeah, and I was like kind of a part of like an online community, like a Discord. So we were all kind of feeding off of each other in terms of inspiration and things like that. But also they didn't make me draw. So I think that it truly was like just having the time. Well, the escapism for while I was working during COVID. And then after I had quit, because I couldn't take it anymore, it was having the time and the space, which I know is a luxury. And I definitely feel very grateful for having had that luxury to, I mean, with unemployment payments and then also savings, being able to continue, and just weird life stuff happened in the last 2 years for me. And I was able to take advantage of it and make a lot of artwork because of it, which I'm very lucky to have done,
Yeah.
So.
No, I resonate so much with that too. Because that was a very weird period. And, at that time I was in school, like wrapping up my BFA. And
I can't imagine.
that was like, well, it was like weird, but it was also kind of comforting because like I just got to focus on school at that point. My job stopped in like the beginning of April. And then from April to basically the summer until I got a remote job, because that's when remote working was finally kind of finding a functional aspect. And I started working for a marketing company. But that period, I was just at home working on my school projects. And I felt like that's when I got to what you were saying, that time. You just have all day to focus on your art and your projects. And I feel like I had my best work come out of that period. And that's what really like set me up for later on. And if I would have been stuck at work and trying to balance that out, I don't think things would have come out the same or with as good quality and intentions as it did. You kind of need, it is a luxury. And sometimes some of us do get lucky in however positive or negative sense, whether you lose your job and you're unemployed for a few months and that's when you could focus on it, whether it been COVID and everything was closed and you got to focus on it, whatever the circumstances is. Like sometimes those life events like need to happen and you kind of need to get brought down a little bit. And all of a sudden your best work comes out of that. My whole life fell apart in like 2022, and then 2023 I launched the punk anthology, and since then it's been booming. It's what you were saying. I've had both of us, it sounds like we've had more success the past year than we ever had in our life, and it just takes kind of getting beat up and reanalyzing things. But do you feel like it's all paid off at this point? Like the pain you went through during all that and dealing with those type of people and experiencing that, depression, and now you're going to conventions and you're interacting with people and they're boosting you up and, encouraging you to make art. Do you think it was all just worth it overall?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, well, it's more so, it's less, I think, thinking of it as like worth it or not worth it. I feel like the way that I think about it is COVID was an incredibly difficult time for everyone. Mm. We lost so many people. It was scary. It was just so unlike anything we've ever experienced. We're still dealing with it. I think of myself, because I'm 31 now, and I was 2020, and I'm doing the math in my head. So I was 27. Mm-hmm. And I feel as if I lost the end of my 20s due to COVID, basically.
We're like the same age.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Feel you there. Yeah.
And because of that, I feel strange. I feel like, you missed out on, I mean, that's the thing, is I can't even imagine having been, because like my cousin was in college. Her whole time in college was basically COVID. And so I can't even imagine missing out on such formative experiences. Yeah. And what that, and, children, young children are very behind in their socializing skills because of COVID and things like that. So basically it was a very difficult time. And the way that I think about it is I was able to make lemonade out of lemons, essentially. Yeah. And I think that while everything else was not great, I had no social life. I didn't get to see my friends. I was incredibly lonely. It's just hard. I wasn't working. I was depleting my savings, it's all these kind of negative things, but I do feel as if I made a huge leap in my art. And I don't think that, it's hard. I hate to say it, because I feel like I don't want anyone to ever feel as if they didn't take advantage of the time that they had.
I feel you there.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
Because that's not, everyone is different, and the way that they react to things are different. And everyone's journey through life is different. And I just feel lucky that, like, I was just talking to one of my old professors from college, and he told me, he was very well known. He was invited to other countries. He did residencies. He was invited to speak. He was invited to be in gallery shows, all over Europe and things like that. And he was on this, path where he was doing very well. He's been doing very well for the last 20 years. And after COVID, no more calls are coming in for him right now. So he would have to work really hard to rebuild those connections that he had, start hustling all over again. And what was I going to, I lost my train of thought. But it's
rebuilding your life after something too. And I totally, understand that too. Cause there's a lot of graduates, it seemed like, that were, about to graduate during that period, and it didn't matter what you're graduating in, but then the whole world stopped for like nearly 2 years. And then when they're applying for jobs, they're like, oh, well, you graduated 2 years ago and you haven't done anything. Like,
what do they expect?
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
I feel like that's I haven't even heard of anyone saying that, but that's crazy to me that they would even say that. Like, of course you weren't doing anything. Like,
yes, it's like, and they kind of, like, a lot of people I found out were kind of just like screwed over, because it's like, well, I couldn't do anything for 2 years. And it's like, I did what I could, and that was just survive and do my best to get through the day to day and figure out my life. And it's unfortunate my timing with this lined up with that, but I'm still trying. And I think, circling kind of back to the beginning of the conversation, when you're trying to figure out a way in life and figure out how to navigate things and you think you have it cracked, and then the whole world changes and now it's a mystery to us all. It's hard to jump back on, and it's harder for some people than others. And some of us were very fortunate and able to find an artistic path, and we're able to discover some things about us that we kind of already had hidden beneath. But then, it didn't work out as well for everybody else in that sense. So it's like, we do feel lucky and, fortunate for our outcome. But at the same time, we're just like, we're still kind of baffled at what happened to the rest of like the world. And we're still trying to also recover and catch up and really just like make sense of what we're doing and try to help others make sense of what they're trying to do as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's wild, and being an artist too is like one of those things where like you want to find a path and you want to find a calling and you want to find a way to make a living off of it. And it's all about marketing and promotion, but it's also about finding what fits your happiness levels the most. Cause you could be making art and also be miserable because you're not doing anything you really want to do too.
Yeah. I mean, that leads into like the point that I feel like is the most important point, which is make art and make what you like, and people will come. People, like that's just and that's the thing, is that people don't come immediately, like, and like what you do. Just keep making more stuff. I made stuff all through my 20s. I had crazy art blocks. I was just making stuff, like drawing things that I liked. I did a lot of fan art. I still do fan art. Obviously, I draw these wrestlers, and it just, one day I just hit this place where my art looked the way that I wanted it to look. And the only way I got there was by drawing all the time. And then I drew something that I liked, which was professional wrestling. And then suddenly people were like, wow, I also like professional wrestling and I like your art. I want to see more of your art. And then people started paying me for it. They started commissioning me, started following me on social media. And like, I feel I'm lucky that it's like this strange niche that I found. But I would never have gotten here with everything I did, going to school because of COVID, whatever, all the decisions that I made, the most important decisions that I made were to keep drawing, draw all the time, and draw what I loved, no matter what. Like I could have continued to, like, for even in pro wrestling, right? I could have drawn the most popular wrestlers that there were so that people would like or retweet my work. Rip Twitter. Honestly, no longer with us, but I could have done that, but instead I just drew the same wrestler over and over and over again, and because I liked him. Yeah. So like, and I made comics which were not as popular as illustrations or little doodles, and I made comics of dudes who like are not like the one guy, Hallowicked, that I made my long comic of. He hasn't wrestled in like 2 years. I don't know, but I like him and I watched his old stuff, and he's great. He's super nice. He's very supportive of my work.
That's rad.
Yeah. And
that's enough of a reward in itself. You know what I mean? Like you got that attention to that person that you look up to and like you're doing this for, or making the art of. And then, if they see you and recognize you, you're just like, you know what? That's all. That's kind of what I needed. And I'm just gonna keep doing this.
Yeah. And it's cool. That's like a very cool feeling to be like, I think you're cool. And they're like, I think you're cool. And I'm like, wow, this is great. Circle.
Love it. Oh man, Tanya, this has been a great hour of us speaking. I didn't even realize we're at like past the 50-minute mark here. It's such an exciting conversation. So thank you so much for this.
Thank you.
I really
this
do.
Is so fun.
I'm excited to see you later on this year at Small Press Expo. I'll definitely be there. We'll definitely hang out and I'll check out your work. Please. And I'll be expecting to pick up at least 1 to 2 chapters of this upcoming book that you're going to we'll be working on. So I'm so glad we're not
free.
Well, we'll trade some books. So I promise we'll make it worth it. Yeah, there you go. Why don't you tell us where we could find you and what we can expect from you for the rest of 2024?
Well, I am anywhere that I am, my username is Mina Coletta, MINACOLETA. If you see me, if you see that name, it is me. No one else has that name. You see, like the other day, I was playing Heroes of the Storm, which is a Blizzard game, and someone messaged me. It was like, "Did I just play against you? Is this your username?" And I was like, "Yeah, that was me." And they were like, "You were sick. You kicked our butts." So that's me everywhere. On Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, Blue Sky, or Blue Ski or whatever. I'm hopefully going to be at a bunch of conventions this year. I've been applying to all over the country. And I have a gallery show. I don't know. When does this come out? I think do you know when this episode will come out?
I haven't checked the schedule yet, but we could try to line it up.
Okay, so the gallery show, the opening reception is February 13th, which I would not be in time for because that's next week from when we're recording, but it is up for a month into March in New York City at Pace Gallery by City Hall Park. I have a bunch of my wrestling art and comics on display there, which is very cool. So if you just check out my social media, I have all my stuff available to purchase on my online store. But if you want to come say hi to me at conventions, I'll be posting where I'm going. So please, I would love to say hello to people. So I'm hoping graphic novel, that'll happen. Draw more stuff. Hell yeah.
Nice. That's so exciting. And, hopefully we can have you back on the show later this year. We're working on doing a live drawing segment. So maybe we could get you onto that as well. And you could, show me some drawing stuff. But this has been so inspiring and just so, honestly, I try not to talk too much on these interviews because I try to let the person talk, but you just resonated so much with me. So thank you for that. Really cool. Yeah. Really great conversation. I'm going to finish up and then I'm just going to draw after this at this point too. I'm excited. Really.
Hell yeah.
But for all of our listeners out there, don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, share these episodes, share them to people that you love and creators that, you think that would really benefit from them. And if you print with Comix Wellspring, shoot me a message over on Apollo City Comics and keep an eye out for all these awesome indie Kickstarters going on. We're going to try to announcing more as the months go on. And as always, thanks for hanging, stay creative, and stay inspired. Looking for high-quality printing, fast turnaround, and the industry's best customer service? Look no further than Comix Wellspring. Trusted by thousands of indie comic creators, Comix Wellspring has proven to be the go-to comic book printer. So when you're ready to bring your comic books to life, go to comicswellspring.com and be sure to check out one of the best platforms to sell your physical and digital comics online, the CWS Bookstore. Remember to subscribe, hit that notification bell to see our lives come out twice every single week on YouTube and podcast platforms. And also tag us when you share your favorite episodes and moments from the show. And remember, creators, thanks for hanging, keep creating, and stay inspired.